The Lord be with you.
With thy spirit.
Let us pray. Blessed Lord, who has caused all Holy Scripture to be written for our learning, grant that we may in such wise hear them, read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest them, that by patience and comfort of thy holy word, we may embrace and ever hold fast the blessed hope of everlasting life, which thou hast given us in our Savior Jesus Christ, who liveth and reigneth with thee in the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So today we're going to, I believe all of this is actually narrative, which is nice. So it shouldn't require all that much explanation. But since we're going to be reading this narrative, I think today in particular, it would be helpful to get a little bit of pronunciation out of the way on the front end. So the Assyrian king is named Sennacherib. It's not Sennacherib, it's just Sennacherib. His name is Sennacherib. Judah's king is Hezekiah, not anything else. It's Hezekiah, and everything and things like there's a guy named Hilkiah. Generally, I's before A's are always Aya. So like Hilkiah, Eliakim, Hezekiah, that sort of thing. And generally, at the beginning of Hebrew names, it's pronounced with a hard A, like a long A. So Asaph or Asa. Though when you get to Assyria, it's not Assyria. It's just, but because that's a different country. But so, all right, Hezekiah, Sennacherib, Eliakim, Hilkiah, that sort of thing. All right. Who wants to jump in first? Not Patrice. Okay. I'll let Jim jump in, and we're not going to do full chapters at a time. We'll stop because we'll stop midway through and sort of shift. So, all right, Jim, you can jump in if I share my screen.
Right.
All right, go for it.
Okay. Sennacherib's message. Assyria's king Sennacherib marched against all of Judah's fortified cities and captured them in the 14th year of King Hezekiah. Assyria's king sent his field commander from Lachish together with a large army to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem. He stood at the water channel of the upper pool, which is on the road to the field where clothes are washed. Hilkiah's son, Eliakim, who was the palace administrator, Shebna, the secretary, Asaph's son, Jonah, the recorder, went out to them. Then the field commander said to them, "Say to Hezekiah, Assyria's great king says this. Why do you feel so confident? Do you think that empty words are the same as good strategy and the strength to fight? Who are you trusting that you now rebel against me? It appears that you are trusting in a staff, Egypt, that's nothing but a broken reed. It will stab the hand of anyone who leans on it. That's all that Pharaoh, Egypt's king, is to anyone who trusts in him. Now suppose you say to me, we trust in the Lord our God. Isn't he the one whose shrines and altars Hezekiah removed, telling Judah and Jerusalem, you must worship only at this altar? So now make a wager with my master, Assyria's king. I'll give you 2,000 horses if you can supply the riders. How will you drive back even the least important officials among my master's servants when you are relying on Egypt for chariots and riders? What's more, do you think I've marched against this place, to destroy it without the Lord's support? It was the Lord who told me, march against this land and destroy it. Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah said to the field commander, please speak to your servants in Aramaic, because we understand it. Don't speak with us in Hebrew, because the people on the wall will hear it.
All right, so this is the first part of this. the field commander is there and he makes this speech. There's a couple of things that are worth noting, I think, which is you get the sort of scene set, and the conversation is happening between these three and the field commander, right? And the first part right here, the field commander says, tell Hezekiah, blah, blah, blah. Basically, all the stuff we've been hearing. Don't trust in Egypt. Remember, we've been reading all these oracles saying Egypt's not going to work out anyway. Don't trust in Egypt. And then he says, oh, but you're going to trust in the Lord. And this line is important. So Hezekiah was known for centralizing the cult, so to speak, all the worship and rituals into Jerusalem. And so all the other shrines that had been floating around where they had, a priest here and a priest here, and they did sacrifices here and there, stuff that had been going on really since the beginning of the religion, and all the way back into when Jacob in Genesis puts up the rock after he has the dream about the ladder and the angels and calls the place Bethel. That becomes a very famous shrine. So places like Bethel and other places were very important shrines. Hezekiah had basically destroyed all of those and centered everything in Jerusalem. And so the argument here from the field commander is actually kind of interesting. He's giving the exact same argument that Isaiah has given. Don't trust in Egypt because they're going to fail you anyway. And then he kind of does a flip side to what Isaiah says. He says, why would you trust in the Lord when you've torn down all of his shrines already, right? Whereas Isaiah actually thinks that's a good thing. So there's a little bit of an interesting disagreement from the foreigner critiquing the religious practices of Judah. And then this last part is they make a bet, which is kind of funny, or he makes a bet with them for 2,000 horses. They'll give them horses if they can do, even get any help from Egypt, and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's and then the last little bit is important as well. They don't want the people in Jerusalem to hear what's going on because they all speak Hebrew, and so they ask them to speak the more regional language of Aramaic. Anything?
Is he saying we'll give you horses to fight against us because we know that you don't have the people to do that?
Yeah, basically, we're so much more powerful than yeah. Yep. Oh, and the last part of this is very important too. It's as if the convert, and this probably is what happened. It's as if they know the conversation that has been going on for the lead up to this, because this line right here is actually what Isaiah has been saying, is that the Lord has brought the Assyrians down to wreak vengeance, right? And so the Assyrians seem to know the arguments and are using it against them. And the really interesting thing is this one, where they're using all the arguments against, the Assyrians are using all the arguments that Isaiah has been using, except this one is reversed. So you shouldn't rely on the Lord because you haven't been doing the right thing. So this is kind of undermining Hezekiah and Isaiah and their religious practice. Anything else? All right. There's Sherry, can you do, where are we? Here, from the field commander on?
The field commander said to them, "Did my master send me to speak these words just to you and your master, and not also to the men on the wall? They are the ones who will have to eat their dung and drink their urine along with you." Then the field commander stood up and shouted in Hebrew at the top of his voice, "Listen to the message of the great king, Assyria's king. The king says this: don't let Hezekiah lie to you. He won't be able to rescue you. Don't let Hezekiah persuade you to trust the Lord by saying, the Lord will certainly rescue us. This city won't be handed over to Assyria's king. Don't let Hezekiah, because this is what Assyria's king says: surrender to me and come out. Then each of you will eat your own vine and fig tree and drink water from your own well until I come to you to a land just like your land. It will be a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Don't let Hezekiah fool you by saying the Lord will rescue us. Did any of the other gods of the nation save their lands from the power of Assyria's king? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim. Did they rescue Samaria from my power? Which one of the gods from those countries has rescued their land from my power? Will the Lord save Jerusalem from my power? But they kept quiet and didn't answer him with a single word, because King Hezekiah's command was, don't answer him. Hilkiah's son Eliakim was the palace administrator. Shebna the secretary and Asaph's son Joah the recorder came to Hezekiah with ripped clothes. They told him what the field commander had said.
Okay, so this is kind of like classic psychological warfare, right? Like he's outside yelling at them in the language that everybody can hear. And don't trust the king. He's wrong. And then it's sort of, it's like, what is that? It's like a carrot, right? And a stick to a degree, like, don't trust the king. You're going to get wiped out. He's wrong. And then, but if you surrender, and this was fairly common practice, and we actually will see this with the Babylonian exile that, which is later, that they take, this is kind of a message right here to the upper echelon people in society. It's like, look, you guys are all talented and wealthy. Why stick around here? Come back to a much better place. It's sort of as like, it's time to get out of this podunk city and come to New York, and we'll bring you there and you'll love it and it'll be fantastic and it's a much better place. So it's kind of a friendly take on exile, right? To take you to a land. So and that's what they did with the Babylonian exile years later, is they took all of the leadership crowd and all of the high-end artisans and things like that out to add them into their own place. So that's pretty much what's going on. The last little part about this is back to trusting in the Lord. Basically the argument here is, how is the Lord any different from any of these other gods? We've swept all the way down, and none of those gods saved none of those people. So that's that. Anyway, they don't answer, and they go into Hezekiah with ripped clothes. So let's see what happens next. Any questions on 36 before we go on? All right. Make it as big as I can with still being able to see. Can everybody see all the way from side to side? Okay. Patrice, you're up.
I know. When King Hezekiah heard this, he ripped his clothes, covered himself with mourning clothes, and went to the Lord's temple. He sent Eliakim, the palace administrator, Shebna, the secretary, and the senior priest to the prophet Isaiah, Amos's son. They were all wearing mourning clothes. They said to him, Hezekiah says this, today is a day of distress, punishment, and humiliation. It's as if children are ready to be born, but there's no strength to see it through. Perhaps the Lord your God heard all the words of the field commander who was sent by his master, Assyria's king. He insulted the living God. Perhaps he will punish him for the words that the Lord your God has heard. Offer up a prayer for those few people who still survive. When King Hezekiah's servants got to Isaiah, Isaiah said to them, say this to your master. The Lord says this, don't be afraid at the words you heard, which the officers of Assyria's kings have used to insult me. I'm about to mislead him. So when he hears a rumor, he'll go back to his own country. Then I'll have him cut down by the sword in his own land. The field commander heard that the Assyrian king had left Lachish. So he went back to the king and found him attacking Libnah. Then the Assyrian king learned that Cush's king Tirhakah was on his way to fight against them. So he sent messages to Hezekiah again. Say this to Judah's king Hezekiah. Don't let the God you trust deceive you by saying, Jerusalem won't fall to the Assyrian king. You yourself had heard what Assyrian's king do to other countries, wiping them out. Is it likely that you will be saved? Did the gods of the nations that my ancestors destroyed save them? The gods of Kozan, Haran, Rezeph, or the people of Eden in Telasar? Where now is Hamath's king, Arpad's king, or the kings of Lair, Sepharvaim, Hena, or Eva?
Great. Okay. So I think it's pretty obvious, but they go in and they talk to Hezekiah, and Hezekiah says, go to Isaiah, right? So they all go to Isaiah and tell him what's going on. And then Isaiah says, basically, don't worry about it. This is the Isaiah portion, right? Don't worry about it. The Lord is going to mislead him. This is the Lord speaking right now. I am about to mislead him. So when he hears a rumor, he'll go back to his own country. Then I'll cut him down by the sword in his own land. And then we see that the beginning of that is what goes on. So the field commander leaves, goes and finds the king who's attacking Libnah. Off the top of my head, I can't remember where that is, but it's probably on the way back. And so they're warring all over the place right now. And then while the Assyrian king is at Libnah, he discovers that Cush's king is on his way to fight against him. And so they basically send a message to Hezekiah and his crowd saying, we may be distracted right now, but we won't be for long. We're going to come and wipe you out. Make sense? And then they give another list of gods in other places. So earlier we had the Samaria and other, this is, more gods, giving you the sense that the Assyrians have really conquered everybody that they've run into. And we'll go from there. All right. Charlotte has just arrived. Charlotte, can I have you to read this part where, and I'll give you the pronunciation thing that I gave everybody else. It's Hezekiah.
Yes.
Sennacherib. Okay. Those
Okay.
are the two people that we're dealing with mostly. Hezekiah is the king of Judah, and Sennacherib is the king of Assyria. And what has been going on is that the Assyrians are basically at the gates and are claiming that they're going to conquer the people and take them into exile, and that will be very good for the people if they go into exile, which obviously it wouldn't necessarily. And they went to Isaiah, and Isaiah said, don't worry, trust in the Lord. So now, Charlotte, will you read Hezekiah's prayer?
Okay. and Sennacherib, is that how we're saying it?
Yeah,
Sennacherib?
Sennacherib and Hezekiah.
Okay. Hezekiah took the letters from the messengers and read them. Then he went to the temple and spread them out before the Lord. Hezekiah prayed to the Lord, Lord of heavenly forces, God of Israel, you sit enthroned on the winged creatures. You alone are God over all the earth's kingdoms. You made both heaven and earth. Lord, turn your ear this way and hear. Lord, open your eyes and see. Listen to Sennacherib's words. He sent them to insult the living God. It's true, Lord, that the Assyrian kings have destroyed all the nations and their lands. The Assyrians burned the gods of those nations with fire because they aren't real gods. They are only man-made creations of wood and stone. That's how the Assyrians could destroy them. So now, Lord our God, please save us from Sennacherib's power. Then all the earth's kingdoms will know that you alone are Lord. Then Isaiah, Amoz's son, sent a message to Hezekiah. The Lord God of Israel says this, since you pray to me about Assyria's king Sennacherib, this is the message that the Lord has spoken against him. The young woman, daughter Zion.
Let me get this so you can read it all. Okay, go for it.
The young woman, daughter Zion, despises you and mocks you. Daughter Jerusalem shakes her head behind your back. Whom did you insult and ridicule? Against whom did you raise your voice and look on with disdain? It was against the Holy One of Israel. With your servants, you insulted the Lord. You said, I, with my many chariots, have gone up to the highest mountains, to the farthest reaches of Lebanon. I have cut down its tallest cedars, the best of its pine trees. I have reached its most remote lodging place, its best forest. I have dug wells, have drunk water in foreign lands. With my own feet, I dried up all of Egypt's streams. Haven't you heard? I set this up long ago. I planned it in the distant past. Now I have made it happen, making fortified cities collapse into piles of rubble. Their citizens have lost their power. They are frightened and dismayed. They've become like plants in a field, tender green shoots, the grass on rooftops, blasted by the east wind. I know where you are, how you go out and come in, and how you rage against me, because rage against me, and because your pride has reached my ears. I will put my hook in your nose and my bit in your mouth. I will make you go back the same way you came.
Great. Okay, Jim, can you finish us off with this last 3 paragraphs?
Certainly. Now this will be the sign for you, Hezekiah. This year you will eat what grows by itself. Next year you will eat what grows from that. But in the 3rd year, plant seed and harvest it. Plant vineyards and eat their fruit. The survivors of Judah's family who have escaped will put down roots and bear fruit above. Those who remain will go out from Jerusalem, and those who survive will go out from Mount Zion. The zeal of the Lord of heavenly forces will do this. Therefore, the Lord says this about Assyria's king. He won't enter this city. He won't shoot a single arrow here. He won't come near the city with a shield. He won't build a ramp to besiege it. He'll go back by the same way he came. He won't enter this city, declares the Lord. I will defend the city and save it for my sake and for the sake of my servant David. The Lord's messenger went out and struck down one of 185,000 soldiers in the Assyrian camp. When people got up the next morning, there were dead bodies everywhere. So Assyria's king Sennacherib left and went back to Nineveh, where he stayed. Later, while he was worshiping in the temple with his god Nisroch, his son Andromelech and Sharezer killed him with a sword. Then they escaped to the land of Ararat. His son Esarhaddon ruled after him.
Great. Okay, so a lot happened in this little chunk that we just read. So the first part is, it's interesting that it's titled Hezekiah Praise, because from here on down, it's a completely different thing. So Hezekiah makes his prayer. He trusts in the Lord. Isaiah says, great, glad you're trusting in the Lord. And then there's a message that the Lord speaks, and it's a prophecy against Sennacherib, which is this whole long thing. And basically it's, you've insulted me, but I've been planning all of this from the beginning, and everything that you've done is part of this plan. And I'm going to rage against you, and because you've been so prideful. So there, he's going to fall. And then you get a great, I love this one. You get a sign. So the sign is not that Sennacherib is going to not invade. The sign is a long-term sign that in year 1, there'll be a plentiful harvest. Year 2, you will eat what grows from that. It means the harvest is going to be so plentiful, but then there's going to be kind of a drought in year 2, right? So they're eating from the previous year. And then year 3, they'll have a good harvest again. So the sign is going to be, if you don't believe that Sennacherib doesn't attack because, if you don't believe that it's because of the Lord, here's a sign to prove it on top of that. Does that make sense? That's what this whole business is. And it's nice that it's a long-term sign, because it basically is one of those things like, woo, we got away. That's great. The king died and didn't invade. But then Isaiah says, well, there's this long-term sign, just in case you forgot. There's proof that this was all done because of the Lord. And so the second part of it is that the Assyrian king will never enter the city. They won't even wage war against it. They won't besiege it in any way. And then we get the last bit that tells what happens. And this is a plague, right? That's what this looks like, is that the plague hits the Assyrian army. The Lord's messenger is the one that brings it. And that would be like the angel of death or something, for what that's worth. And then 185,000 people die, and it all happens in one day. So there's some really fast working plague that comes and hits the people, is what it looks like. It's possible that that this is a battle, but this looks more like it was a plague that happened in the middle of the night. The reference point, I think, is much closer to what happens with Pharaoh in Egypt during the angel of death, when that happens at night during the Passover. They wake up and everybody's dead the next day. So Sennacherib goes back, he goes home back to Nineveh, and he's assassinated in Nineveh by his children. And that's the end of Sennacherib. And now we move on to Esarhaddon, who's yet another king of Assyria. Any questions on this? All right. All of the lead up we've been having to the war led to that. All right, 38. Now we move on a little bit, and we get more about Hezekiah and Isaiah. And who's up next? Sherry, I think you're up next. Can you read Hezekiah's illness?
At about that time, Hezekiah became deathly sick. The prophet Isaiah, Amos's son, came to him and said, "The Lord God says this, put your affairs in order because you are about to die. You won't survive this." Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord. "Please, Lord, remember how I've walked before you in truth and sincerity. I've done what you consider to be good." Then Hezekiah cried and cried. Then the Lord's word came to Isaiah. "Go and say to Hezekiah, the Lord, the God of your ancestor David, says this, I have heard your prayer, have seen your tears. I will add 15 years to your life. I will rescue you and this city from the power of the Assyrian king. I will defend this city. This will be your sign from the Lord that he will do what he promised. Once the shadow cast by the sun descends on the steps of Ahaz, I will make it back up 10 steps. And the sun went back 10 of the steps that it had already descended." A composition by Judah's king Hezekiah when he was sick and then recovered from his sickness. "I thought I must depart in the prime of my life. I have been relegated to the gates of the underworld for the rest of my life. I thought I won't see the Lord. The Lord is in the land of the living. I look upon humans again, or be with the inhabitants of the world. My lifetime is plucked up and taken from me like a shepherd's tent. My life is shriveled like woven cloth. God cuts me off from the loom. Between daybreak and nightfall, you carry out your verdict against me. I cried out until morning like a lion." Sorry, do you want me to stop?
No, keep going. I didn't say anything. Keep going.
"Like a lion, God crushes all my bones. Between daybreak and nightfall, you carry out your verdict against me. Like a swallow, I chirp. I moan like a dove. My eyes have grown weary looking to heaven. Lord, I'm overwhelmed. Support me. What can I say? God has spoken to me. He himself has acted. I will wander my whole life with a bitter spirit. The Lord Most High is the one who gives life to every heart, who gives life to the spirit. Look, he indeed exchanged my bitterness for wholeness. You yourself have spared my whole being from the pit of destruction because you have cast all my sins behind your back. The underworld can't thank you, nor can death praise you. Those who go down to the pit can't hope for your faithfulness. The living can thank you as I do today. Parents will tell children about your faithfulness. The Lord has truly saved me, and we will make music at the Lord's house all the days of our lives." Then Isaiah said, prepare a salve made from figs, put it on the swelling, and he'll get better. Hezekiah said to Isaiah, "What's the sign that I'll be able to go up to the Lord's temple?"
All right. Thank you. So this is Hezekiah's illness, and he gets sick. He nearly dies. Two things of note in here. Actually, three things of note. He gets sick. He nearly dies. Isaiah says he's going to die, which is kind of interesting. And then Hezekiah prays that maybe something the Lord will rescue him. And he does. And so on top of that, he gets 15 years extra to live, and the city is rescued. This is quite the response to the prayer. And then there's a sign on top of that, which we read earlier. If you remember, this was, I think, the first session we had on all of Isaiah. We read in, I think it was 2 Kings, a lot of this scene where the sun goes backwards. That's what this sign is. That it's, if you consider a sundial, the shadow cast by the sun descends on the steps of Ahab. So the sun, as it moves during the day, the shadow goes down these steps in the tower. And so the sign is that it's going to go backwards 10 steps. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so on top of everything, Isaiah is able to make the sun go backwards, or the Lord is, and Isaiah can predict that it's going to happen. So it's worth noting that in classic biblical fashion, this is slightly different than what we just had. It's because the Assyrian king we've already been told the story about the Assyrian king going away, right? So this is sort of another take on why on how they're saved, but it is rooted in the prayer and trust of Hezekiah in the Lord. And then the long, but I think very nice poem that Sherry read is a poem about recovering from sickness. And if you're ever sick, I mean, this is, the context is obviously very old, but this is we don't read this ever in any in church all that often, but it's worth knowing about that. There's a nice prayer for recovery from sickness that Hezekiah prays, and it goes all the way down to the end that the Lord truly saved me, and I will celebrate in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. And then Isaiah says, "Oh, he's getting better. Let's put some medicine on." And then there's another sign that we will see if it gets answered in the next chapter. Anything on this chapter? All right. Chapter 39. Okay. We will note that we didn't see a sign from Isaiah after Hezekiah asked again, because he already had his sign. All right, who's up? Patrice, are you up?
Yeah, I'm up.
All right.
The Babylonian king's messengers. At that time, Babylon's king Baladan's son, sent letters and a gift to Hezekiah, for he heard that he had been ill and had recovered. Hezekiah was pleased, and he showed them his treasury, the silver and the gold, the spices and fine oil, and everything in his armory, all that was found in his storerooms. There wasn't a thing in his house or in all his realm that Hezekiah didn't show him. Then Isaiah the prophet came to King Hezekiah and said to him, "What did these men say? Where did they come from?" Hezekiah replied, "They came to me from a distant land, from Babylon." So Isaiah said, "What did they see in your house?" Hezekiah said, "They saw everything in my house. There was nothing in my storerooms that I didn't show them." Isaiah said to Hezekiah, "Hear the word of the Lord of heavenly forces. Days are coming when all that is in your house, which your ancestors have stored up until this day, will be carried to Babylon. Nothing will be left, says the Lord. Some of your sons, your own descendants whom you fathered, will be taken to become eunuchs in the king of Babylon's palace." Hezekiah said to Isaiah, "The Lord's word that you delivered is good," since you thought, "That means there will be peace and security in my lifetime."
Okay, great.
Making his sons eunuchs is a good thing?
This is
Yikes.
classic. So this is the end of what is generally known as sort of first Isaiah. This is the hinge passage on which the rest of the book kind of turns. At this point, most of the prophecies moving forward are about being in Babylon in exile and that sort of thing. And so we'll deal with that in the next few weeks, but basically the book of Isaiah is broken into, most scholars will think of it in terms of three general parts. They don't break down exactly like this, but most of 1 through 39 is referred to as first Isaiah. There's some passages and chapters in there that seem to be from a different time. Most of 40 to, I think it's 55, is known as second Isaiah, which is thought to be, the content of it is generally during the Babylonian exile. And so it's thought to be either prophecies looking ahead to that, or it's thought to be prophecies written at that time by Isaiah's later disciples. And the third part of Isaiah, which scholars will call third Isaiah, and again, these are not exactly as neat as it may sound, which is 56 to 66, give or take, are prophecies about coming back, and either are looking forward to the end of the exile, or are prophecies about what it's like after the end of the exile, but it's all looking ahead stuff. So this sets the stage for that by, I mean, this is, we haven't had anything like this, right? So the Assyrian war, this would be like the epilogue in a book, right? The Assyrian war is over, Hezekiah is still king, and you're like, oh, good, we finished the book. And then chapter 39 is the epilogue. And, you know, another story about Hezekiah. Oh, the Babylonians are here. Cool. Let's welcome these foreigners. Let me show you all my great stuff. I'll show you all of my gold and all of my silver and all of my treasure. And Isaiah shows up and says, who were they? Oh, they're from Babylon. What did you show them? Everything. And Isaiah's like, that's the classic sort of, you know, hand to head, basically. Right, these people, now that they've seen your wealth, are going to eventually come down here and wipe you out. So, but it won't happen in your lifetime. And this is one of the stranger and probably funnier lines, in my view, in the Bible. That's not so bad. Won't happen during my life. So he's happy, and there you go. But no, yeah, your descendants, some of your sons even, will become eunuchs. But Hezekiah is like, that's fine. I'll be dead. And then the chapter ends. And so if you were thinking of it as as like a book, this sort of is an epilogue, and you kind of shift gears in the next few chapters into what feels like another book, if that makes sense. All right, anything on 39? All right, I'll show you what 40 looks like, but we're not going to read it because it this line you probably do remember, right? Comfort, comfort my people. This is at Christmas. We read this sort of thing all the time, but we're not going to do this. We'll map out 2nd Isaiah at some other point and continue that next week. Any questions on anything from Isaiah that we've hit so far? I will share my screen on one thing. I have a, let's see if we can pull this off. At one point during Hezekiah's prayer, I wanted to throw this up there, and I forgot to. But during Hezekiah's prayer, it talked about how do you see the Ark of the Covenant here? Oops. You see my Ark of the Covenant? It talked about how he went into the temple and threw himself down and prayed to the God that sits on the angel's wings. So he's probably in front, he's probably in the Holy of Holies looking, or talking about it if he's not there, but looking at, this is obviously not the Ark of the Covenant, but the descriptions of it are pretty clear in the Bible in Exodus. And so the idea was that the Lord sat, you know, amongst the angel's wings. So when Hezekiah is saying that, that's kind of what that is. All right, anything? We can end a minute or two early if everybody wants to. I can show you a live stream test if you want to stick around, but I'll stop recording. So end of Bible study. Those that want to stick around can see something, and if not, no worries. So